no time, they built up an empire of wealth and influence. After all, they were the royalty and nobility of the ancient bloodlines of Sumer and Babylonia. They had the startup capital, so to speak. They swore to take revenge on Russia, the country they had been expelled from. Their revenge also stretched out to the Jews, as in the original people from Judea. Why? Because back in the time of Princess Jezebel, during a situation in which two deities were challenged, they chose Yahweh over Baal. That was their death sentence, as the Khazari and Ashkenazim would never forget nor forgive. Within a few years after they had settled in Europe, they formed an absolute master plan. A plan so big, so intelligent, and so evil, it would change the fate of the world forever. One of the Khazarian families that had joined the exodus from Khazaria was the Rothschild family. That's right, the Rothschilds I talked about in part 2 of my previous series. They settled in Frankfurt, Germany, where they became wealthy and powerful through trade and banking. They called southern Germany Ashkenaz, as a tribute to their ancestry. They offered notes to travelers who left behind their gold and silver, safely stored in the vaults of the Rothschilds, banknotes against deposits. This way they collected an unprecedented amount of riches that, combined with the interest they received, were further used to extend their wealth and thus their power. Meyer Amschel Rothschild had 5 sons who became powerful bankers in 5 large cities: Frankfurt, London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. In no time, they gained financial power over all of Europe. They became the personal bankers of kings and queens. They even became the treasurers of the Vatican. Before we continue with an event in the 18th century that has been deliberately erased from our history books, we have to pause this storyline and go back to the early Middle Ages for a second storyline. The two will meet during this 18th century event. And when they do, things will fall into place, I promise. We'll start in the age of the Crusades. In 1048 AD, an organization was founded that we refer to as the Order of Malta. They were founded in Jerusalem. Their goal was dual. One arm of the order ran a hospital in the Holy Land to tend to Christian pilgrims. The other arm was military, tasked by Rome to protect Christians against the local Muslim population. Their symbol? The equal-armed Maltese cross. During the first 50 years of their existence, Jerusalem was Muslim territory. The amount of Christian pilgrims who went to Jerusalem was limited, even by Islamic law. In 1096 AD, the first of 9 wars broke out. It became known as the First Crusade. The Crusades were religious wars initiated and supported by the Roman Catholic Church. Their goal was to recover the Holy Land from Islamic rule. 3 years after the Crusaders had left for the Holy Land, this goal was achieved. Godfrey de Bouillon and his brother Baldwin, leaders of the First Crusade, became rulers of Jerusalem. The Crusades may have been romanticized in literature and movies, but the truth is, they were insane religious wars focused on nothing but death, destruction, and forced conversion. An estimate of nearly 2 million people died. In 1118, a French knight by the name of Hugh de Payan founded a military order together with 8 relatives and friends. They called the order the Poor Knights of the Temple of King Solomon, later known as the Knights Templar. This order sprang forth from a secret society called the Prieuré de Sion, the Priory of Zion, an order that, by the way, is still alive and active today. With the support of the King of Jerusalem, the Knights Templar set up headquarters on the sacred Temple Mount. Their official goal was to protect pilgrims on their way from Europe to Jerusalem. In and of itself, this is fascinating. 9 knights were officially appointed to protect Christian pilgrims over a distance of 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers. God only knows how they did it. Their not-so-official goal was to rebuild the Temple of Solomon that had been destroyed in 586 BC by the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Why this was so important to them, we will show later on. In 1129, the Order of the Knights Templar received the official support of the Roman Catholic Church. The order grew abundantly and donations came pouring in from all over Europe. The knights adopted a code of conduct in which they swore unfailing obedience to the master. According to researchers, the principle of obedience made the Knights Templar lethal. They acted swiftly and with certainty to do as they had been commanded. A force of Templars became an extension of the will of its commander, the Grand Master. At the height of their power, the Order of the Knights Templar comprised of almost 20,000 members. Only 10% were armed knights. The other 90% took care of infrastructure and logistics. Even though the knights had sworn to a life of poverty, the order was excessively rich, owning large plots of lands, farms, vineyards, mills, horses, arms, equipment, the island of Cyprus, and an impressive fleet of ships. All the way from Europe to Jerusalem, in every city, they had monasteries, castles, churches, universities. They were so powerful they did not need to obey local laws. They could pass freely across all borders. They didn't have to pay taxes, and they were exempt from all authority except that of the Pope. Furthermore, everything they took from the Muslim population that they subjugated and murdered on their way was given to the order. Did they have these privileges in writing? Oh yes, Pope Innocent II took care of everything by signing the papal bull Omne Datum Optimum in 1139. All the order had to do was swear obedience and allegiance to the Pope. There was one area, though, in which the Templars truly excelled: banking. They had a network of banks in many countries that enabled pilgrims to deposit assets in their home countries and withdraw funds in the Holy Land. By the 13th century, the Templars had become such competent and trusted bankers that European kings and nobles who embarked on crusades to the Holy Land often forwarded large cash sums to the Templars that could be withdrawn later so they could pay their armies. The Templars even gave out loans to rulers. They excelled in everything they did, for which they were overloaded with donations, gifts, fame, and fortune. However, in the early 14th century, the Knights Templar met their final destiny: King Philip IV of France. This man was heavily indebted by the order. When he asked for even more loans, the order refused. King Philip decided it was time for the Knights Templar to meet their maker. On Friday the 13th of October 1307, a multitude of knights were arrested, including their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. After years of imprisonment, he and many others were